Hi, I know it's been a while, but I want to make a quick video on data stores. I feel like people are overcomplicating the process nowadays, or like they don't really understand it. So I just want to do a quick video, making like a modular data store. I will go through it step by step, show what does what, explain it all. So hopefully you can understand how data stores work and how to make a data store module for yourself. So the first thing we're gonna do is make a module script, and I'm just gonna name this data. Pretty simple. I've also named the module here data as well. Once we do that, we need to require it, of course, so we'll just do data require. I'll just use wait for child for now, data. This will get our module so we can use it. So from there, we can start making our functions. So we can do like function data, and this first one I'll call get, and this will get our data. We'll also have another one, which is like data, like save, and then we'll also have like something like data update. Now you might be wondering what's the difference between update and save. Save will run when the player leaves the game. Update will just update when we want to actually edit their data, etc. So yeah, that's why we have separate functions there. From there, we need to set up a few more variables. We're gonna this is all gonna be cache based, so we'll make a table called cache. Now, don't worry if you don't understand this yet. I will be going over it later. We're also gonna need like a default data table, which equals all the default data. For example's sake, I'll just put something simple like this, like money 100. We're storing money, but realistically, you can put whatever you want in there. And then we're going to need our services, of course. So we're going to need player service. So we do game get service, player service, which you get our player service. We're also going to need run service. Now, that might be weird if you've worked with data stores before. The reason we're getting run service is we can check if the player is in studio, and if you're like in studio, we don't really want to save data because like we're testing, etc. So we can just check if you're in studio, and we can just return the default data. And then we need data store service, of course. So data store service equals game get service data store service. Real quick thing, just make sure you have enable studio access to API services. If you don't have this on, then you're not gonna be able to use data stores, as Roblox says right here. Enable studio access to game services such as data stores. But yeah, make sure you have that on. Alright, back to the video. Pretty simple. From there, we can actually start making our functions. So we're gonna have to pass the player, of course. And for example's sake, we can just use player added for now. So let's get the player service in here as well. Game get service players. We can do players dot player added connect function player. If you're new around here, all this does is any code inside here. When a player joins the game, it will run this code. It also gives us the player, so we can print player here. If we run this, you'll see what happens. We click play. It will just give us a player alpha JPEG, which is my username. But what we actually want to do is, let's say, get their data. So if you needed the player's data when they join, you'd do something like this, data get, and then you'd pass the player. From there, we can actually make our function. So first thing we want to do is check if this function is going to serve two purposes. It's still going to get their data when if it hasn't loaded yet, so it's going to call it from the data stores. And if it already does exist in the cache, we can also get it. So we're going to check if it exists in the cache first. So we'll do something like player cache equals cache and then player. And if they exist already in the cache, that will get it. And then we can check that. So we can do if player cache, then we can just return it. So what happens is, let's say they've joined the game and there's already an entry in here. So let's say alpha JPEG. So they're already in the game. They've been playing for a while and their data looks something like this. They have like money 100, let's say 1,000. What will happen is when you call this function, it will return back the cache here. So alpha JPEG money 1,000 already. If they don't exist in the cache yet, it will actually go call our data store and get their data from the server, etc. So that's what the cache system does. It basically just stores their data. So yeah, if they already exist, then we can just return it. Another thing we also want to check is if we're in studio right now. So we can do else if, and we can do run service is studio. And if they're in studio, then we can just return the default data. If you're playing in studio, unless you need to, there's no reason to go call the data stores when you can just return the default data every time you're testing. So yeah, if you're in studio, you can just return default data. From there, we can actually make our function that calls the data if they don't have it yet. So we do attempt request function, and we're gonna have to return this function. So attempt request, and we'll probably have to call it. Let me do brackets. From there, we can actually call the data store. So if success, data equals pcall function. I will explain this in a second. We can do data store. We actually need to make a data store. Let me do that real quick. So let's do local data store equals data store service, get data store, and we'll just name it player because we're saving to the player. Pretty simple. You can name this whatever you want in here. Keep in mind, if you change this will wipe the player's data, so make sure you keep this consistent. Don't change it later on. I want to go down here. We're going to do get async, and then save to the player. Oh, get it from the player.user ID. Make sure you use the user ID, because if you save it to something like their username, and if they go change their name, they're going to lose their data. So make sure you set it as the ID. From there, we can do if success, then this will check. This will run if it successfully got their data from the data store, and if they don't have data, which this might not make sense. You might be wondering, if it worked, then why won't they have data? This can work. Let's say they're a new player and they just joined the game. The data store will work. They just won't have any data because they haven't played before. So it will work, but they have no data. So if they have no data, we have to give them the default data. So we can write data equals default data, and I'll give them the default data if they're a new player. From there, we can add them to the cache. So player.userid equals data, and then we can also return that data, and now we'll return that to this function, which will then return it back to here. From there, if it's not a success, we also want to just try again. Now I'm going to add request attempts because we don't want to keep in trying forever in case Roblox is down or something like that, like their servers. So we do request attempts. We can do request attempts +1. So we've tried once already. If request attempts equals 3. So if we've tried 3 times already, we'll just kick the player. And the reason we do that is, like I said earlier, we don't want to just keep in trying. So we can just do like error. Let's do this. Error loading player.name. It will just kick them for that error loading player name. Let's say data. Something as simple as like that. After that, if it hasn't been 3 attempts, we can just try. So we'll wait 3 seconds before we try again. And then we'll do return attempt request again. And this will call this function again and try again. Anyway, that's getting the data. Pretty simple. That's that already done. The next thing we need to do is our update function, which is very, very simple. We're just going to pass the player and the data, and then we'll do cache player.userid equals data. Well, yeah. And what we can do now is, like, let's say you've gotten the data. So let's say later in the game, you somewhere in your code, you write data get, you get the player. It's like local data, something like this. You then edit their data. So like edit data.money equals this amount of money. And then you can write data.update, the player, and then the data. And this will update their money to whatever amount you pass. So you edit the table and then you update it, and then they'll update their data. Pretty simple. From there, we need our save function, which is also pretty simple. We'll just do player. We'll check if they're in the cache. So we'll do local cache equals cache player.userid. We don't want to save if they have no data, because sometimes a player might join and then leave instantly. And if you save after that and their data hasn't loaded, it might wipe their data. So you want to check if they're already loaded before you actually try saving them. So if cache, then we'll do repeat. The reason we're doing repeat is we want to save no matter what, but until it actually saves. Yeah, so like we just want to keep on trying over and over again until it saves. So local success error equals pcall function, and what we'll do here is data store set async. We'll save to the player user ID, of course, and then we'll save the cache, and then we can just we'll keep on trying this every 3 seconds. So task.wait, let's say 3 seconds, and repeat until success. So, and we should probably, yeah, this is fine. So this will keep on repeating until it works. After that, we'll just remove them from the cache because they've been saved. So do player.userid equals nil. There's no point storing them in the cache if they've already left the game. It's just a waste of space in like server memory. Once we do that, we're just going to add 2 more things. One to save all the players if the server gets closed, and another just periodically every, like, let's say 2 minutes, just automatically save everyone. So what we're going to do is local function, and we'll create a server save, and we can loop through all the players. So 4 player in pairs, and then we'll do players get players, do, and then we can just save that player. So we can call our own function, this data save function. We do player, like this, and then we'll wait another 3 seconds, and this will loop through each player. Well, actually, we don't really need to do. We'll do something like 1 second. So it'll loop through each player, and it'll save all the players. Server save, and then another thing we're gonna do is a loop every 2 minutes to automatically save everyone. So let's do, we're gonna use quarantine.create. If you don't know what a quarantine is, I'll explain in a second. Function, not function, oops. Quarantine.resume, no, quarantine.resume, and then quarantine.create. There we go. And here will be a function. I think I've messed up my brackets here. There we go. So we'll do while task.wait, let's say every 2 minutes. We'll then do a server save. So this will save everyone's data every 2 minutes. I really forgot to mention what a quarantine does. So what a quarantine does is whatever code you put in here won't yield the code below, which basically means it won't stop the code below. So in like most cases, let's say you have a while true do loop, something like this, and you have some code within here, and you had a print down here. This print will never run because this is an infinite loop. This will keep on going on forever, and it will never reach line 8 of code. So what you can do with a quarantine is you can put this loop inside the quarantine. So let's say while true do, and then have your print down here. This will now run the loop as well as reach line 7, because anything within this quarantine won't stop the code below, and it'll run this like separately on it by itself. Anyway, hopefully that makes sense. Back to the video. And then here game bind to close, and then we'll also do a server save. So when the game closes, we'll save everyone's data, and every 120 seconds, we'll also save everyone's data. What we can do here is like players.player removing, connect function, player, and then we can do like data.save player, and it's pretty simple. That's how you get and save player data. And yeah, it's basically DataStores in what, 10 minutes. All right, hope you enjoyed. Hopefully that helps you all out. Goodbye.